I guess let's go ahead and bring in the guests. We have Rachel Jensen and some dude named Vit from someplace. I don't know where he is. You guys come on in and sit down here. And welcome to the Crypto Show. We are undermining the banks and the man and having some fun while we do it. And there's a little story to that. It's really quite interesting. So the Crypto Show was born out of the Texas Bitcoin Conference in 2014, and just out of our meetups, a guy who ran Brave New Books, or owned it, actually created it, Harlan Dietrich, he said, you know what, we should have a radio show about cryptocurrency. And the guy had funded the local pirate radio station by helping them put the tower up and all that, so it was really quite easy when they owe you one. But so this anarchist bookstore was in a basement underneath the bank, and directly beneath the vault, we were mining Bitcoin. So we had to turn the machines off, when we went live on air. So that was our tagline. We're undermining the bank, and we were literally mining under the bank and having some fun while we did it, for sure. There were, amazing guests. I remember, one of the very first shows, it was Cody Wilson, Amir Taki, Peter Todd, and who's Andy Greenberg or whatever from Wired Magazine is in there following these guys around. I'm like, wow, what the hell is all this? So, and I got myself involved, and then I became the guy who was organizing everything and kept it going for 6 years. And now here we are. How many years has Anarchapulco been? I've been to all of them, and I don't even know. Is it set? Okay, this is the 7th year. We've broadcast from it every year, and now we're doing it live on stage. And so each day we'll be talking to someone different about something different. And it seems like this is a really important year to talk about second passports. A lot of people I'm sure, are here because they want to know about, citizenship somewhere else. And we have Vit Jedlika, the president of Liberland, which, sorry about the guy. I sent a guy to meet him at the gate that had a shirt that says, "Kill the President." And I assured him that it wasn't him. So, yeah. Don't worry, it wouldn't mean. Actually, it's Jason. His shirt says "Kill the President," but liberals can often not read very well, so they get, their feelings get hurt. And then we have Rachel Jensen with ECI, which is one of the sponsors here, and I know you heard the talk from them yesterday. But let's talk more about getting a second passport and living outside the country. And I want to start with you, Vit. What is the benefit of having a Liberland passport? How does someone do it?
I think the biggest benefit is that you are actually becoming a citizen of a nation which you can kind of relate to. I believe, there is probably the biggest concentration of Liberlanders on the planet right now. A part of course, the Liberland area is right here. There has been enormous support from this group for creation of Liberland. And of course, it's always good to have a second passport. I can tell you it can help you to get out of many troubles. And let's be honest, passports are nothing but membership cards in different places, right? Which kind of claim some territorial sovereignty over some place. And Liberland really wants to be the freest place on the planet. It's 7 square kilometers between Croatia and Serbia. We're still struggling with our neighbors, but that doesn't mean it prevents us from building the country. And now, 5 years after we started it, we do have 700,000 people who applied for citizenship. So it's a fairly big group.
Right. Are there any actual structures on there? Is anyone living in the physical location, or?
It's a challenge, right? Like Croatia doesn't claim the territory. Still, after 5 years, they don't claim the territory. Yet they basically declared a small war on us. But that, again, doesn't mean that we are not building the governance as we want it. We are not actually physically present right next to Liberland on the Danube River. So if you're coming to visit Liberland, be it for anniversary, the 13th of April, or the 13th of August, which is the biggest event, the Floating Man, so you will be able to actually live on the river right next to Liberland, and you can of course also visit it. The ultimate goal is to turn one of these festivals into actual settlement of Liberland, and the situation is really kind of crazy, right? Like Croatia claims that it's not their territory, basically. So when you cross from Croatia to Liberland, they charge you for illegal border crossing and throw you in jail for a day. And if you go there from Serbia, the same problem kind of comes up, but somehow they don't know where you're crossing from, to which country you're crossing to, but they still charge you with illegal border crossing. So it is a chilly situation, which really it amazes me, how the countries are really struggling to kind of solve it in any way. And the best solution, of course, for them is a full creation of Liberland as a sovereign country. And that's why we got one of the best lobbyist companies now working with the politician in all the power centers. And we've got some of the best tech guys also building up the governance for Liberland. So I hope we will be actually able to show you some big progress over the next 3-4 months. And we will also have a couple more recognitions on the way, which is quite important part.
Okay, can you tell me the story about why neither country wants Liberland? I mean, obviously, countries are always seeking power. Why would they not want it? Why are they like, hey, it's the land that no one wants, but why?
That's the coolest part, where basically if either of the countries will claim this territory, they will lose much bigger territory. And that's the fun part. Like, the more Croatia is actually land hungry, the less then they can claim Liberland, right? So it is this situation where it's kind of like a how to call it? I don't like to call it. I'm a little bit behind that, but it is a nice sovereign trolling, because whatever they do, the best solution for them in this situation is the creation of Liberland. Basically, if Croatia will ever won the border dispute with Serbia, they have to give up Liberland. And vice versa. So it is a situation really. The creation of Liberland is the best solution to the border dispute, which takes place for 28 years right now.
And you mentioned the passports and building relationships with other countries. What other countries are you talking to? And well, I mean, where do you have embassies yet?
Well, we've got 110 countries now covered, which is fairly big. I think we're probably one of the best covered diplomatically country in Europe, in that sense. And it's a great group of people. Actually, my wife, she just put together the latest brochure where you can see the presentation. It's very easy to download it from liberland.org. You can scroll down all the people that are representing us globally. And we got recognized by Somaliland. We cut the deal with them. So now if you're traveling to Somaliland, Liberland is actually the only country which kind of officially can enter without visa to the country. That's the fun part. And we've got a couple more countries on the way. We actually cut the deal in Haiti last year, and we are having like 3-4 countries now on the go. So it's happening. It's happening. It's not super fast.
How about Venezuela?
Venezuela, that was that was also great. That was also interesting trip.
I tried to go to Venezuela to team up with some people to do something when I was working with Dash, and they just wanted too much. I was like, they wanted me to prove that I own my house, that I have enough money for this. They wanted bank statements and all this stuff. And I'm like, you people are crazy. And then I found out that it's just what the U.S. expects of them if they want to come here. I'm like, oh, maybe. No wonder. Exactly. So what would be the process for somebody to get a passport through Liberland and the cost?
Fairly easy process. We just need people to get engaged, basically, to help Liberland move forward. And we've got this merit system, so you can basically become citizen if you collect more than 5,000 merits right now. So that's the process, fairly easy. We do actually check who the citizens are going to be. We don't want to become a rough nation in the sense that we are having criminals, etc. on board. So there is some sort of KYC, but you can still be an anonymous e-resident of Liberland if you hate to to go through some sort of process of getting to know you. We need to have our backs covered as well. We cannot be a place where we, for example, open doors for Liberland companies that are doing illegal activities, etc. It's contradictory to the recognition. But of course, there is this whole world of anarchy, which anybody who doesn't like to kind of be citizen of any country can still enjoy, which, of course, I cherish. That's why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, let's switch to you.
Right. I think one of the most important things that we can give ourselves is our options. And we don't want to necessarily feel like we're stuck in one country or our home country. And when you get a passport from your home country, that gives you the right, more or less, to go to and from another place. But if you're not liking what's going on in your home country and you don't want to stay there, then you need to establish residency or citizenship in another country to give you permission to stay there. And I know there were a few of you that I talked to over the past day or so who are either looking at moving here to Mexico or exploring your options in another country. And when you come into the country, they give you 180 days to be here as a tourist or however you established yourself coming into the country. Now, after 180 days, you may be able to get your passport stamped for another 180 days, or they're going to ask you to leave. And if they ask you to leave, yes, you can become a perpetual traveler and keep moving along. But if you want to take advantage of some certain tax incentives, for example, from your home country, you do need to establish residency or citizenship in another location. So what we found, I'm from New York originally, moved down to Latin America in 2012. I ended up getting my residency in Panama in 2015 or 16 it was, although I live in Belize. So how I look at it is it's just important to have global options and be able to say, all right, well, I want to be able to hop on a plane tomorrow and go wherever I want to go. And so as you give yourself those options, as you establish residency, as you establish citizenship, it helps you along that journey. And there is a difference I do want to note between residency and citizenship. Residency is essentially when you get a green card to another country. It gives you permission to be there for as long as you want. And residencies across the board vary depending on the country that you're in. Sometimes it's a temporary residency. You have to renew it every now and again. Other times it's a permanent residency where you have it for life. And then you're able, in many cases, to establish citizenship from having that residency. Again, it just depends on the country. But once you get that citizenship, you get the passport that you were mentioning over here. And the passport gives you permission to travel on that document. So if you want to just have one option, then you'll typically have one passport. But if you want to have options, then you'll get residency in another country, you'll establish citizenship in another country, and it gives you that sort of flexibility to travel around. And I know over the past year, it's been wild, and each country has reacted very differently to everything that's going on. Some closed their borders. You weren't able to get in, you weren't able to get out, unless you were a resident or a citizen of that country. So for example, I mentioned I'm a resident of Panama, and Panama wasn't letting people come in and out for a little bit. And if you were a resident, though, or you had your citizenship, you were able to have that sort of access. So it was like that across the board. Many countries were trying to figure out what to do, but if you had the ability to come in and out through this residency or citizenship, then you had that flexibility and you had those options that are important. So that's why I've seen residency or citizenship as such an important way to just protect yourself. And we all know that we wouldn't be here if you weren't physically here. So the best way to do that is to get another residency or citizenship.
Can you explain what ECI is and how is
Sure.
what's the business proposition that goes along with that?
Sure. So we build residential and resort communities throughout Latin America. So you heard Mike Cobb speak yesterday. We're in Belize, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. We're currently working with Jeff on a property here in Mexico as well. And so what we've done is we've paired up real estate ownership with residency programs. So it's a turnkey solution. You own real estate, and then through that real estate, you're able to get your residency and citizenship down the line should you choose. Now, each country has different requirements as to how you can get that residency or that citizenship. Panama, I think, is just one of the easiest. It's a minimum of $10,000 invested into the country. Nicaragua is a little bit more. It's about $30,000. Belize is about $250,000. I'm still learning. The Mexico ones will have that figured out by the time we get the property ready to go. But I believe it's about $160,000 invested into the country in order to get the residency. And Mike yesterday talked about the agricultural side of it. While we do have real estate, we have the tiny homes and condominiums and single family homes. We also have the agricultural side of it. So you're able to own Teak, which is what Mike talked about yesterday. You own the farmland, you own the trees. It's considered an investment. And then from there, you're able to apply for residency. So we've made it really, really easy. I think over the years, it's been about over 1,000 people plus their dependents who have been able to get the residency through these programs.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the Mexico project? Break that down, because I'm kind
Sure.
of now. I didn't even know this existed. So tell me about this.
So last week, our CEO, Mike Cobb, and Jeff were looking at properties throughout Mexico. We're scouting out a new community that really encompasses the beliefs and values of the group here. And so you may have heard Mike at some point or Jeff talk about Ava, the eco-village Asachio we have in Nicaragua, but we like Mexico from the concept that it's close enough to get from place to place. We're looking close, to answer your question a little bit more specifically, we're looking in the Puerto Vallarta area, about 3 hours perhaps from that area, but we're looking at a handful of different properties. I think it will be a good 8 to 10 months before we have the project solidified with site maps and floor plans and everything, but being in the development world in this region for over 2 decades at this point, we have an idea of what we're looking for and how we want to accomplish it. So once we identify that right property, we'll be able to make it happen quite quickly. But we are looking, and within the community, there'll be the tiny home concept. So if you want to live completely off the grid, reduce your carbon footprint, you'll be able to do that with a tiny home. If you need a little bit more space, I understand some of families, and they want a little bit more space, you'll be able to get that single family home or condominium. But through that ownership of real estate here, you'd be able to get the residency.
Can I get an RV spot?
I'm sure we'll work on something like that. You can be part of our creation, Danny.
Yeah.
You're coming in at a good time, right from the beginning.
All right. Oh, well, actually, I know a little bit about construction and building in Mexico. So.
There we go. Perfect.
What are the costs? Tell me what the costs are and.
Sure. In Mexico or just generally
the
across
Mexico
the board?
one.
So we're still working on that. It's going to depend on where it is that we decide to own ultimately, but starting under $100,000 for ownership of the real estate side. But to get the residency here, I know there are a few different ones, and we're identifying which ones will be pairing up with the ownership. But the investor residency here, I believe, and don't quote me on it, but I believe it's $160,000 invested into the country, and that'll qualify you for residency in the country. So we'll have more details on that over the next month for sure. But I would say availability would be starting in the next 8 to 10 months.
Awesome. And you guys, with you, I wanted to go back to ask you about embassies. Are you putting embassies anywhere?
Of course, we've got, for example, Navid. He's our representative in Luxembourg. He's doing a great job with the government there, as well as like operating on global operations. So. But what I would like to tell you is that we also have a residency program, but it's an e-residency program similar to Estonia. It's a very crypto-friendly program where we have a right now partnership with Bitwage, which allows Liberland companies to basically go in and out of banking system without ever touching fiat, which is kind of cool. So you can start your Liberland company and then accept bank transfers and send bank transfers directly from your bitcoins. And you don't have to have any other entity a part of the Liberland company, which I think is kind of nice deal for people that want to be free from banking. Yet they need a established entity to invoice other companies.
Yeah, if you don't know what Bitwage is, it's a company. If you have a job and you get a paycheck or whatever, you could actually send your money to Bitwage and have them buy crypto for you for whatever percentage of your check you want to put in crypto, and they're kind of a crypto bank and handle that. And
that's one of their main use cases, but they can actually provide pseudo banking for basically crypto people that don't like to be in the banking system. But you have to be a Liberland e-resident, so you need to have some sort of KYC in order to be able to utilize it. But then you're not working there as a private person. You are actually there as a Liberland established company, and it's only $150 to become e-resident of Liberland, so it's not an expensive deal, and it is probably one of the options if you're not sure about citizenship in Liberland. And I think the e-residency program is something you might want to look into.
I think I seen Jeff do a video one time where he had your passport and it was a diplomatic passport.
Yeah.
What's this?
Fortunately,
what is a Liberland diplomatic passport, and how do I get one?
It's kind of handy, especially if you get, for example, chased by police and they just try to rob you. Like it can happen in some countries, like to us yesterday. But of course, like Liberland diplomatic passports are for Liberland representatives, and they are meant for serious business when we are getting recognized in those countries. So, for example, if we travel, to Somaliland or to these other countries, then we are on official business, diplomatic business with the country, and then we are able to utilize it. But we just recently launched a regular passport program, which we were postponing for a couple of years. Right now it's operational, so regular citizens can also get travel documents. But again, like Liberland passport is not a passport of Santa Lucia where you have free access to Schengen. It's a different story, right? It's also 10 times.
I just want one for Walmart, because usually when I go into Walmart, I won't wear a mask, and I tell them diplomatic immunity, and I walk, and the security guard is like chasing me through the store. So as long as you can outwalk the old guy at the door, you can usually make it back to the electronics section before they catch you. Oh man. Okay, go ahead. Continue that.
I mean, it's of course it's a a lot of crazy stories with the diplomatic passports, but luckily, we have to be conservative in these things. Like everybody would like to have a diplomatic passports. No, they're actually only for people that are actively working on recognition of Liberland, and it's a great group of people, by the way. We have really 110 countries covered. But if please also come to us or to me or Navit or my wife, which is sitting somewhere back there. And talk to us if you have some country which is not listed, or actually doesn't really matter. You can also help the office which is created in some country which is already functional. That's even better. The more the merrier. Basically, the embassies we have, and the more people are working there, the more likely is the. But we are a serious endeavor. It's we have to be very conservative when we are engaged in diplomatic world, and the lobbying company that we just hired always is like this to me, because
build
we are
a
not
virtual
conservative enough. But I'm trying hard to basically establish the whole diplomatic body in the traditional way.
You should build like a virtual country as well, and
By
sell
the way,
property
that's a
on
big-
NFTs or something.
By the way, that's a big project, and I can already tell you it's happening. We are working with Zaha Hadid, and we are working with Unreal Engine, and it's going to be an urban incubator for Liberland. So it's going to be also directly tied to the land in Liberland. It will be for investors and for architects who are actually going to build the whole Liberland first in virtual reality. And it's going to be a great project. Like I can tell you, the engine that they are using now, it's far better than anything that is out there. So it will be pretty cool. There will be probably up to 800 people simultaneously in that space, and the rendering is just like crazy good. And everything is actually streamed to you. You don't have to have a powerful computer. You can run it on your phone, because everything is streamed via internet to your browser. So it's going to be a pretty cool project, and I think we're probably 4 months away from launching it. And I can tell you, Zaha Hadid is one of the top 5 architectural studios in the world, and they committed to making the first outline of the urban plan of Liberland. So it's a big project that is happening. We're also looking for investors, because it's a separate entity from Liberland that is engaged in this. I'm only like partially involved, but I think it's going to be great project, really.
Do you have anybody interested in making like virtual banking in Liberland, kind of like Cayman Islands or Swiss banks?
I can tell you right now, one of our citizens is getting a fully recognized German banking license, and he committed to support of Liberland companies. We have the same thing in Cyprus right now. So if somebody really wants to have a bank account, it's happening. I'm very positive about like fully functional banking for Liberland entities in this year.
Do you have anything on that, or?
No, I think that's awesome, and I think collect as many passports and residencies as you can. There's no downside to it. And you mentioned before, they call it the law of reciprocity, when your home country says that you, like Venezuela, for example, when you're talking about that, the law of reciprocity, when one country says that you can do something, and then the U.S. or your home country reciprocates that. And so you just have to be careful that you can have dual citizenship and residency. It doesn't matter. You can have as many residencies as you want. But I'm guessing you'll allow multiple passports, right? Awesome.
Of course. I mean, the more memberships cards you have from more countries, the better for you. And I think really it's a lot of fun, and I think what is cool about Liberland, that we are still quite unique. We don't have really any competition in the world, and I think even though the endeavor seems for many people a bit off, it is actually, I think, the most viable endeavor that there can be. I think people like us really need to also have a recognized entity that they can do business through. We don't necessarily need to live in Liberland, but you need to have kind of a home place where crypto is fully supported, where there is no mandatory craziness with anything, including the mask, etc.
No bombing your neighbors or any of that?
No. That kind of a Jeffersonian approach. Make friends with everybody, but don't make any alliances.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people here are curious about, does anybody have any questions for these guys that's on your mind that you want to know about getting the passports? Or?
And I can add a little bit more, too.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, what's really important, and something that I really hear you saying loud and clear, is this sense of community and finding a group of like-minded individuals where you're able to have these sort of conversations. And obviously Liberland does that for the group here, and I think just generally across the board. I know, Katrina, we were talking last night about you coming down to Mexico and going to the expat groups in Facebook or whatever platform you're using to find and read what they're saying, see how it is that how receptive they are to vaccines or what's going on generally, and then that will help you identify where it is that you should go. And, many of us don't necessarily want to stay in our home country right now. We're not happy with what's going on. So find these outlets, and it's up to you to make that decision to do that. Nobody can do that for you. And so, Katrina, I just thought it was awesome that you were telling me how you were going through the forums and reading the questions and the answers and really understanding what different communities felt and how they were reacting to this. So at the end of the day, it really is up to each of you individually to make that decision to find that community. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about and why we come to a conference like this. Find that community, find the people you can have the conversations with. And Liberland, I think, don't know too much about it. I'm just learning about it now, but I think that it's a great outlet for that. But across the globe, you will find that there are these communities and pockets of like-minded individuals. So I think it's awesome.
I can just add to that. I think it would be great to also form some sort of partnership, in future. But let me just mention that we are probably here also. Like, by the way, it was a bit difficult for us to get out of Europe for us, even at this day. Like, we were actually in Prague when now the second or 10th shit hit the fan, and they locked us in Prague itself. So we get to get a special permit to get from Prague to Prague airport. It was crazy. So we decided we're gonna stay here at least.
Did you use your diplomatic passport?
I didn't have to use anything at the end. Luckily, they didn't check us. But it's just getting completely ridiculous, right? And they know that doesn't have any influence whatsoever. But they're just trying to, as hard as they can, to try to test what people can take and what they cannot take. And by the way, they really, yesterday my friend was organizing a big demonstration in Czech Republic, and they used force to dismantle it, despite that being completely unconstitutional. But what I want to mention is we're probably going to stay here for 1 month before we head back to Liberland directly. And right now, when I say back to Liberland, I mean on those boats that are parked next to Liberland, or as close as possible without getting in trouble too much with the powers that be. But we were going to stay here probably for another month, and we are also going to travel. Our plan is to travel down to Central America, because there are a number of Liberland villages already as well. There is also, yes, that's and maybe we do have something in common there already, which we just don't know about, but we will discuss that later. But there is, for example, Agrorismo. That's a startup village in Panama. Maybe you heard about it. In Costa Rica, there are 2 places. Our representative to Costa Rica has a nice resort there, and he's building a village as well. In Belize, there is something. In Honduras, there is one Liberland development as well. So it's kind of cool that Liberlanders are also globally getting together, and there is like 30 places on the globe which are actually going to be featured on the new website, which is coming up in a month. So you will be able to scroll down all the places where Liberlanders are getting together.
How does somebody find your website? And
it's liberland.org. It's
Liberland.org.
fairly easy, or gov.ll.land, because we are pushing for the LL domain to get recognized. But it takes actually 50 recognitions to get there, so we're still some 46 recognitions away from being a member of the organizations. But if we speed it up, I think we can get to that in 2, 3, 4 years.
Awesome.
And so come visit Nicaragua too. I don't know if you all heard about the AVA, the Eco Village Asachio Homes. Jeff has been talking about it over the past, 6-7 months. But we had a couple from Australia. Is anybody here from Australia? No, because they've been on complete lockdown. But
there are a couple of people.
There are
here,
a couple.
yeah.
So it's been awesome though, because we had one couple who was just so wanted to get out, and they needed to get a letter from us as a developer to give them permission to leave the country. So they left. They came to Mexico. They're in Nicaragua now. And in Nicaragua, has anybody been to Nicaragua? Okay, a couple people. Great surfing, great fishing. It's a really neat country. But they really have been a champion for freedom over the past year. They never had a lockdown. They never shut their borders. There's no masks that are required. And I thought it was really interesting that the president gave a speech, and loosely translated, it came out to, "We're not your parents. We're not going to tell you what to do. You're all autonomous. You should be able to make your own decisions. If you have an elderly parent at home or family member, you make that decision. But businesses were never required to shut down." And it just, I think, was really powerful for us to see. And I know that drew in a lot of folks from this sort of community as well, because we're all, and that's I think how we all believe here. That's why we're all here. So it was pretty neat to see that sort of community come together within Nicaragua. So on your Latin American travels, come to Nicaragua too.
So the flu numbers were up and the COVID numbers were down there, right?
Right. Well, it's interesting because right, of course, July, August, there were a significant amount of deaths, but it's streamlined, like it flatlined. And so now there's the herd immunity there, and everybody is continuing on with life, and they just never shut their borders down. And I think that's really important for a lot of us. The economy kept going. People
Thank God for COVID. We finally cured the flu.
Exactly right. Yeah, there's nothing else going on besides COVID right now.
So the restrictions are very limited there at all, and they don't tell anybody what to do. And you're saying that the death rate's just basically the same as it was before. Nothing really changed. Wow.
There were a couple of people that wanted to ask questions that were
But
behind you, kind of.
what were the COVID numbers in Liberland?
Actually, to be honest with you, we had one death. Our representative to Senegal died on it. So, we are also a bit touched. But a part of that, I think that I don't know.
But he wasn't in Liberland when it happened.
No, he was in Senegal. But, it is actually, it can kill somebody probably. Yeah. But still, I'm making this comparison table between the Czech Republic flu in 1995 and COVID. And it's still in the same magnitude, And nobody ever cared about the flu in 1995. It took 3 weeks. Okay, there was 8,000 deaths or so. But it was passed and nobody gave. Okay, now we have doubled number of deaths. But it's a craziness.
Monty, you had a question? Or
Does Liberland currently have any embassies anywhere around the world?
Of course we do, yeah. We of course, well, right now, okay, they're honorary consulates, as long as they are not fully recognized. But we do have our representative office, which is very close to recognition in Somaliland. We do have 2 of them actually in Central America as well. So it's happening, and if you, for example, go to Brussels, there is a nice castle in the center of the city, which is our representative office in Brussels. So,
any in Canada yet?
Well, we do have representatives in Canada, but we don't have a physical space in Canada. It would be
it's
great
too
to have
cold.
one.
We'll talk about a physical space.
Awesome.
And you had a question?
Yeah, so you say you have pockets of villages around the world and in Central America. So is there currently, or will in the future, will there be an effort to create other sovereign nations in those places?
Is that a question for Vit or for Rachel? For Vit?
Okay. Well, that's of course a good question. I mean, there is currently a couple of efforts in that regard, but again, it's not something when we are focused now on. Our main focus is the territorial integrity of Liberland and making sure that that is a free spot for Liberlanders.
Right, it's your priority.
Yes.
The other question was, you're creating, you have architects working on infrastructure, eventual infrastructure. Is it being created in virtual reality at the moment?
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. The virtual Liberland is happening. It's actually already 1 year since we started the endeavor. Right now, we've got probably the best partners we can get for it, and it's going to be also connected to Liberland blockchain, which we're also developing right now. We actually took the technology from Polkadot, and we are building the governance, the Congress, Senate, kind of these traditional need to be institutions for Liberland on that technology, and it will also be directly connected to the virtual Liberland project.
Maybe this would work for you guys as well, having virtual properties and, like I said, selling on NFTs and.
No, but by the way,
yeah.
The virtual Liberland is a little bit bigger right now. It's actually a startup which will provide a tool for developers to basically present their spaces in the form that people can actually visit them easily on their browser. They can walk through them without having to go there. So maybe it could be a tool also interesting for you. But for us, mainly it's an urban incubator. It is a way how architects can actually kind of find agreement how Liberland will look like without having some sort of central control authority. And Patrick Schumacher, the CEO of Zaha Hadid, he's very strong on free market urban planning. That's where I'm so grateful for having him on board, because he actually came with this idea, and he's putting his personal effort in it, because he really likes the idea. We will have a nice design for whole Liberland where architects can find consensus how it will look like without having a central authority imposing some sort of rules.
We have another one here.
Does Liberland currently tax its citizens or corporations, and what will tax
it's a completely voluntary. It's actually written in our constitution. And whenever you become a taxpayer, you also become shareholder of Liberland. So that's the main thing we started Liberland with. So, I mean, it's not a brand new idea. I mean, it is something which even founders of United States had in mind, the voluntary tax system on the federal level. Unfortunately, it was never put in place. But I think it's time for it right now.
Theft at all.
I really like this quote by Mark Skousen that the price we pay for not building civilized society is the fact that we pay taxes, right? So I really think it's a time for us to build a society where the interaction between state and citizens is based on completely voluntary interaction, and there is no reason why 2 or 3% of GDP that people will pay voluntarily to the state to keep it function, to keep the foreign policy, okay, it needs a little bit of financing to be able to do diplomacy, to keep the security and justice working, these 3 elements, which are kind of necessary to have a country, to keep them working, 2-3% are just enough. And we might even become one of the richest countries when the whole concept runs through without even taxing people. And this is actually the biggest issue that Liberland has, right, with the powers that be, because when we prove our concept right, it can revolutionize the way countries are running around the world. So, I mean, that's the breaking of status quo. But I think, it's going to happen no matter what. Even, if Liberland wasn't here, it's going to happen sooner or later.
I think there was somebody here one year that was talking about economic zones in Honduras where there were no taxes. I think it was like a little island or a section that was set aside in Honduras
is a
where
great
companies.
place. We actually might want to try to make it over there as well. I think it's one of those spots where a very smart decision by the government was made. So they are granting a autonomy. I wish it was bigger than what is happening there, but they are granting a big tax autonomy. And Roatan is a nice place as well. It's a beautiful with the biggest coral reef around it, and there are multiple developments now happening. And by the way, Zaha Hadid is also involved in that particular project.
What are you guys making your virtual country?
We're going to work on it. We'll partner up and we'll put some homes.
I can imagine if you're reaching out to gamers and creating like a virtual game, it would be like a wonderful way of advertising what you're doing. People would start playing games and not realizing what it is, and then the deeper they fall into the game, it's an underhanded advertising on the cool.
No, funnily enough, it is actually impossible to put all 700,000 people in Liberland. Like, it would be like 10 times more, or 7 times more overpopulated than Macau. So it would be a huge skyscrapers all over the place. So of course, one of the ways is to go virtual and offer e-residency to as many people as possible. The citizenship itself should be a little bit kind of a prestigious thing, really, where,
maybe partnerships with the seasteading guys or something.
Yeah, well, right now we are kind of seasteading Liberland, right? These boats that are parked next to Liberland are actually seasteads that you can visit, and you can actually stay inside of Liberland because the water next to Liberland is part of Liberland territory, and they cannot do anything about it because it's international waterway, so it's protected by all these Danube treaties. So even though the situation on the spot is a bit chilly, I think that's actually what it makes it so interesting as well, right? You've got a sovereign country, which the more kind of land hungry it is, the less it can claim it. So they don't have any real legal way to keep us out, yet they're trying the hardest they can. But we are on the verge of creating a country in one of the most peaceful way that was ever recorded in history. We are actually claiming piece of land that nobody else claims, where nobody was living. And the last sovereign country that was like claiming that territory was Yugoslavia, which no longer exists. And when we started Liberland, actually we got a letter directly from Serbian government which stated they don't mind creation of Liberland on this territory, which was a big support. Actually,
downtown Detroit's kind of like that too, but nobody wants it. They're giving it away for free. I think we have another question here.
I've been thinking a lot along those lines for the past 2 to 3 years. It's great to know that you're like light years ahead of what I have, but what I was thinking about is some property in the United States that could link with another country that would kind of become like a sovereign little oasis inside another country. Is that possible for that?
I mean, like that's how embassies are working, right? But in order for that to be able to fully enforce that, in order to, I don't know, launch your pub during the lockdown, which is kind of funny, you know, if you go to Warsaw or Moscow, the embassies are full, they have beer everywhere, everybody else is locked, but everybody is running their business as usual. They're mining Bitcoin on embassies where in countries where it's impossible to do the crypto. So yes,
More of an embassy, would you be open to?
I'm of course open, but of course the recognition of Liberland by United States is gonna take a while. But our community in United States is great. They have outreach to president, to Congress, to Senate, like you name it. They're doing great job. Our Vice President Bogi Wozniak is on that effort. He's actually based in Chicago and he's got very good contacts. So, you know, I'm very open to collaboration, but probably on this level it will have to be more like this relation of a development kind of village of Liberland rather than fully recognized embassy. But by the way, we also don't have a physical office in United States yet. It would be great to have some partnership with somebody based in Washington, so we could actually physically stick our flag, despite having 19,000 people that applied for citizenship in states. You know, we don't have that, but the community of the people working there and the way they are presenting Liberland is just outstanding.
And maybe those people watching in Float Fest, they own the property there. Maybe they'll put a flag up for you. And shout out to Float Fest too, and all the other watch parties. There was another one. Okay, what's your question?
When you were talking about like a voluntary economy, does Liberland have a take on professional licensure for certain jobs that other countries think need to be licensed, such as medical professionals, construction contractors, these kind of things?
No, we are actually forbidden to organize medical, for example, business at all. Like so, it's directly written in our constitution. So we are completely opposed to some sort of licensing. You know, but that's the fun part where people are trying to push us to give them license to run university. By the way, there is a free university.land, which is a kind of startup university in Liberland. They are going to deliver fully recognized MBA program starting September. But funnily enough, you know, like they're asking us to give them license to run university. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know? You're in Liberland, like we're
Badges?
not giving licenses to universities. But I would love to support them, and it's fun part where they kind of see it as a form of support. But you know, I would break the basic rule where we are actually not allowed to.
What's
to
the
give
speed limit?
licenses.
What's the speed limit there? Can you promise us there won't be topes?
Well, okay, but this is another part, right? Like, who will build the roads thing, and there was, I think, most popular photo on my social media last year was when I was building a road physically when we were organizing the Floating Man Festival, and I was there with the shovel, and then this is the answer, who will build the roads. But of course, like, it can end up that many of the roads will be private in Liberland, and so we will have to deal with the private owners of these roads, and it will be up to your negotiation with them under which conditions can use it. But it doesn't mean that the roads probably will not be free anyway, because people actually like to have traffic around their property in order to make business, right? So, I mean, it's crazy when people are putting up this argument, and they are coming from France, where almost all highways are private, right? And they have to pay whenever they pass. So, you know, but
Mexico's kind of like that with the toll roads. And they're not that cheap either, for sure. Were there any other questions from?
Curious about what the requirements like in Panama or Nicaragua were, like requiring a negative COVID test to get her out or proposed vaccination requirements in the future.
Yeah, so that's a great question. For both countries, you do need to provide a negative test to go in. There are no quarantine rules or anything once you get into the country. In Nicaragua, it's really the airlines that are requiring it, so you need to provide the test within 36 hours of traveling to the airline. But once you get into the country, they really don't even ask about it. But Panama, they will ask to see your negative test when you go in. And then, like I said, no quarantine, though, once you get into the country.
What are they doing about vaccines?
So it'd be very difficult to mandate vaccines in these countries. You know, Latin America, the countries that we work in, are developing nations, and they just don't have extra funds to require vaccines. If they're going to require it, then they need to be able to supply it and provide it. And these countries haven't required vaccines previously, And so I think for them to come around and say, all right, well, you are required to have this one, it really wouldn't align with how they've done it before. So I don't see it being an issue. I don't see it being required to have a vaccine, but keep in the back of your mind, they are developing, so they just don't have that sort of ability to provide free tests or free vaccines to everybody. If you want it, I don't think you guys do, but if you want it, you could probably get it, but it wouldn't be required.
I have a question about your Teak project. How
Sure.
many people are already involved in this, and I mean, do they have financial returns on it? And
Sure. So with the teak, we have multiple plantations throughout Nicaragua and Panama, and cumulatively we have about 600 plus owners. And so as an owner in the teak farm, you get title to it. It's yours. You own the land. You own the trees that are on the land. And we have, you don't have to apply for residency if you are an owner. It's a nice benefit to doing it, but you're not required to. In Panama, what's nice is you can have dependents, which could be your parents. It could be your children up to 18 or up to 25 if they're enrolled in college. And then in Nicaragua, with the residency there, the dependent can be your spouse or your children up to 18. They don't have parents as dependents. But it's a nice benefit to do it. And I think about half of our owners have applied for residency and successfully got it, not good, have successfully gotten it, and they've added dependents. So overall, I think we've had about over 1,000 people apply for residency and get it when you add the dependents in. And when you own the teak farms, it is a 25-year harvest cycle. So has everybody heard of teak hardwood before? I'm seeing a lot of nods. When I first started, I was like, I have no idea what teak is. So I was doing a ton of research, but it's a really, really luxurious hardwood. It is very durable. It's used in a lot of fine construction, a lot of boats. If anybody's a boater, they use it in a lot of boats because it's very durable. So teak, in order for it to grow properly, it takes about 25 years. That's the typical harvest cycle. And so that 25th year is really when you see a bulk of the return coming in, but there are what we call thinning periods throughout that 25-year harvest cycle. So at age 12, 18, and 20, we take down the trees that aren't growing as well as the others, and we sell them and we pay out the profits to the owners. So you'd see payouts at age 12, 18, 20, and then the big harvest at age 25. So how we've structured the program is quarter-acre parcels. You get title to it. You own the trees that are on the land. And then over the 25-year period, we don't include inflation, don't include the increase of teak per year, but at today's price, you'd be seeing about $94,000. That's the projection. $94,000 return on depends on the age of the teak, but for newborn teak, it's about $7,000 to start. And then over the 25 years, you'd see about $94,000 net. Now, against projections, it doesn't include inflation, doesn't include the 5.5% increase per year that we're seeing in teak values. But I'd be happy, we have some more materials at the table. I'd be happy to show that to you. But in addition to the newborn parcels that we also have 15-year-old parcels in Panama. So if you do the quick math there, we know we're 10 years away from that final harvest. So for those of you who, I know it's hard to think in 25-year cycles, but for those of you who are looking for something a little bit sooner, then the 15-year-old option could be a great option for you.
Awesome. Do you have any plans of going into other areas besides teak, or?
We do, and we've looked at other investments. We've looked at cacao before. We've looked at other types of hardwood. Teak is the one that we certainly feel the most comfortable in. Our first farm in Panama is about 22 years old at this point, so we've just done a ton of research on it over the past few decades. But we are looking at other agricultural investments and then also other countries to do it in. One of the big motivators for us as well is to be able to pair it up with a residency program. So we're continuing to look and explore and see what's out there. So we're keeping our mind open. We understand that there's a huge need for agriculture here in the world today, and as the population continues to increase, there's going to be a continued demand for these agricultural products. So we are definitely open to keeping our eyes open, and a lot of it just comes back to due diligence and need and supply and demand and making sure it's a viable investment.
Are there restrictions on owning coastal properties like here in Mexico where
Right. So no, in the countries we work in, title for us is a really important factor in the real estate development. Even as a development company, we want to know that we're going to get title to our property. So to be able to pass title on to our future owners is important as well. So that's one of the big reasons why for the Mexico property here, we're looking inland a little bit. Believe it's within 100 kilometers of the beach. You cannot... I think it's right, 100 kilometers. Yeah, you as a foreigner wouldn't be able to own that. You get the fideicomiso, which is a bank trust, 99-year lease. So we do work in countries where we would get titles to it, pass that on. So in all the countries we work in, we have the titles and owners have the titles.
Is it the legal paperwork harder in Mexico than it is in Nicaragua? Or?
Is it harder? No, I mean, not necessarily. Not necessarily harder. There's still requirements and whatnot, but I wouldn't say it's harder necessarily.
Okay.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have another question? No. So we don't have to repeat them. And go over the pricing again on that, please.
Sure.
So,
Sure. So for the Teak wood, if you want to get the residency in Panama, it's a minimum of $10,000 invested in the Teak, or it could be a home or whatever it is you're investing, but it needs to be at least $10,000 invested. And then the residency cost is about $5,000. You're able to add dependents on for an additional $1,900. So at the end of the day, all in, when you're looking at the Teak parcel, we'll say the two newborns, the Teak parcels, and then the residency, it's about $18,000. Now, if you're looking at the teenage parcel, which is a little bit more because it's closer to harvest, plus the residency, it's about $21,000. And then in Nicaragua, there you have that minimum threshold of investing $30,000 into the country. You can do that with a tiny home. You can do that with the Teak. And once you have that investment, then residency there is about $2,800. So about $33,000 can get you the Teak. It can get you residency, and then you could add dependents on top.
which countries can I get into with that passport, and which ones do I need visas for, or
With these countries, so
with a Nicaraguan passport?
there's a whole list of them. There's a whole list of countries. It's about a little bit less than 100 countries that you can get into with a Nicaraguan passport. Panama's a little bit more than that, but there's a great website that I use. It's called passportindex.org, and it allows you to compare different citizenships and different passports, and really where you see strength in a passport is how many countries you can get into visa-free. That's how they determine how strong a passport is. And so I know that I've done that. I've looked at the U.S. versus Belize versus Panama versus Nicaragua. You can see where you're allowed to get into visa-free. So that would be my best recommendation. It's passportindex.org.
Awesome. Any?
But it probably takes a while before you can get a passport, right, from these countries. When you get the residency, 5 years, yeah, you have to actually be in that. We've got a little bit of advantage. It takes usually a couple of weeks, so it's.
A couple of weeks.
Just get them all.
And how many countries can you get into?
Right, of course that's limited, but there are some other advantages to having a second passport in that
Yeah.
sense. You know, like sometimes they try to just keep you hostage, I don't know, in hotel or something, and they keep your passport, so you give them the Liberland passport, and that actually helped me a couple
Yeah.
of times already.
Yeah.
So there is, and it's by the way, it is a fully, I would say, legitimate passport from the way it is done. So it is a nice document that you're getting as a citizen of Liberland. It's not some sort of a booklet or something like that.
So here's the solution. So you get the Liberland passport in a couple weeks. Come down to Nicaragua or Panama and enjoy the tropics down there, and then you could wait there while you're getting the passport. But at least you have the Liberland passport in the meantime.
Will the Liberland embassy in Nicaragua be built from teak?
Well, that's a great question. By the way, and by the way, Nicaragua, I know that our representative there had a trouble because of the crazy political situation, so he had to leave. Maybe you know some. If you check him out on our website, you'll find who it is. Actually, he's also from this community, one of the few supporters. So it's Nicaragua. I would say it's a bit difficult country politically, but I would say Panama is nice despite now the COVID lockdown. So of course, these are great places with the stable weather. But I would just like to mention one thing. Also, right now there is a new Liberland company that also offers residency in Serbia, which I was surprised that Serbia also doesn't tax foreign income, and it can actually help you on many other fronts. So you can become a Liberland citizen and also resident of Serbia, which, for example, nomad capitalists, the guys, if you know the website, they're actually based there for that reason. So Europe is not that bad. I mean, Caribbean is of course better in sense of weather, etc. But Serbia is a very interesting place because, for example, the lockdowns there were, I would say, the mildest in Europe. It is, we're definitely traveling not back to Czech Republic, but through Serbia back to Liberland. So just think about it as well as another option in your world.
Okay. And what about just residency alone in Nicaragua? What's that like?
Yeah, so
Without-
the residency is that $30,000 option, and then after 5 years you can apply for your citizenship, and that's how Panama is too. And typically when it comes to a passport, I don't know how much you're charging for the Liberland, but it's either time or money. So you can start with the time aspect, which is typically 5 years after getting the residency. You can apply for a passport. Again, it depends totally on the country, but that's about standard. Or you can pay more for it. Like Dominica in the Caribbean, you guys might have heard of it. It's a country that we work in as well, and there you're able to get your citizenship, so the passport, for a total investment about 230,000 US-ish. So it just depends. You can time or money, right? Time or money. I'm guessing you got that figured out. It's probably, you get the 2 weeks, you get the passport. It's probably like, I don't know, how much is it?
Well, we've got 5,000 merits, and merit will be floating. We'll have a floating exchange, and it will be directly built on our blockchain. So right now it's still tied to US dollar. It's getting cheaper, every day, which is. But on the other hand, don't wait too long, because then when we let the token float, it could be a completely different story.
Yeah, if you're in Dominica, definitely go on vacation during hurricane season.
Right, exactly. But we started accepting cryptocurrency a few years ago as well, about 4 or 5 years ago. So as an organization, we do accept crypto, whether it's for the residency or for the Teak or for the homes, regardless. So they're nice options.
Are you guys trying to get anybody in crypto down there to be part of your project, or are you trying to attract any tech projects?
In what sense?
As far as coming to Nicaragua, and didn't you have like the tiny homes and the,
Yeah. So people can use their cryptocurrency to invest in the homes, and they can come down and spend time down there should they choose. But I'm not sure I totally understand that question.
I mean, were you trying to attract those types of businesses as well? Or?
If I can, cook a little of my own thing, is that we are also building a kind of a tech community only 10 kilometers away from Liberland. It's a free trade zone, so no customs and no VAT. No EVAT there. And it's kind of a side project of Liberland, but it's great because, again, Liberland companies can actually have a physical space out of which they can trade, and zero customs, zero VAT, and you have a Liberland structure on top of it, which I think it's pretty cool. And I guess, it will be also interesting for you in the future to build up some sort of tech hubs around your villages in Central America. But again, if you're maybe a little bit Europe-centered, then we have a solution for that.
Awesome. And just one more time, we're about to close up. So what's your, go ahead and, you had something else to say? No. Give us your websites and how people can find out more about you again.
Sure. So ecidevelopment.com or freedom@ecidevelopment.com if you want to just email us directly. We also, over by the massage area, we have information and a few of our other team members there, so you can come chat with us. I think that's the easiest. It's so nice. I'm so happy to be back at virtual events because we're able to, or live events, because we can talk to each other versus emails. But definitely come talk to us, or ecidevelopment.com would be the website to check out more.
And get a green T-shirt from that little kid.
That's
Where is
right.
he?
Yeah, where is he today?
Go ahead. All right, for us it's liberland.org. That's the or gov.ll.land. That's the official one. And I'm president at liberland.org. If you want to reach me directly, it's fairly easy. And I'm monitoring my emails myself these days. It's possible. When Liberland started, I received 500,000 emails. It was impossible, but right now it's doable again.
And if you are here in, here live in Acapulco, they've been having some parties on the beach now. I think they just rented a beach club for the Agorapulco guys, so we're kind of having campfires and stuff. So after all the other festivities are over, swing over to the beach and, get some sand in your, wherever. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for watching, and give it back to Ben here. Check out the cryptoshow.com and our little travel channel if you want to see what we're doing all around Mexico. It's An RV Adventure. It sounds kind of like anarchy on the cool, but it's targeted at travelers, so we're just sneaking the message in.
Do it as much as you want. While they're doing that, before we end this segment, though, do we have that screen grab to put up, guys? So they were talking about Nicaragua, and you guys piqued my interest about this, about COVID cases and lockdowns and how it affected. So while I was sitting there, I was listening to you, but I was also looking for the numbers to compare Nicaragua, the United States, at random, just pick these, United States, Mexico, since that's where we are, and then also Italy, right? Because they've had a lot of cases in Europe and probably one of the most strict lockdowns over there. Just comparing those cases, it's pretty astonishing. So if you guys are able to put it up, but basically what you'll see is the proper way to compare countries, because obviously your population sizes are vastly different, is to compare new cases per day per 1 million people. That would be the correct way to do it. That way you get an even distribution. What you find is the most cases, new cases per day in Nicaragua was back in May of last year, 2020. And I believe at the time they had 10, a whopping 10 new cases in a day. That was their highest day. If you look at that in comparison to the United States and to Italy and to Mexico, they're off the charts. But then as you follow it, what you find is that Nicaragua, within about 30 to 45 days, flatlines and runs 1 new case per day is their average until you hit like January, February of this year. And then you have days where you have less than 1 person a day showing up, right? You have 0 new cases a day in March. If you compare that to the U.S., the U.S. averaged in January and February still about 500 new cases per day. So it's just an interesting idea. I wish we'd been able to put up the graph so you could visually see it. But it is pretty remarkable, right? This idea that the leader of your country says, be an adult, take care of your family, wash your hands, or don't. But either way, we're not going to be the nanny state and control it. Their numbers are incredible. But if you Google Nicaragua COVID cases, you know what you're going to get? A list of all these news articles about COVID cases are surging in Nicaragua, which of course is untrue. They're simply...
I lick the shopping
playing it that
carts
way.
at Walmart, and it's built up my immunity.
You lick the what?
I lick the handles on the shopping carts at Walmart, and it's built up my immunity just fantastically. So.
All right, well, good to know. Well, then we'll go
I get
ahead and
kicked
roll
out
some
a lot.
ads. Make sure you don't give Danny a kiss, and then we will